Welcome back to Strixhaven. I'm your professor, Alex Kessler, House Witherbloom. Today, here with my co-host, Ben Bateman.
What's going on, everybody?
From Silver Quill.
Yes, it's silver. I'm all black. Got my Silver Quill Fitbit here. Mm-hmm. The way we do it, tracking things. That's just how we are in Silver Quill.
Yeah. I got my Pokemon pants on.
Nice.
For
excellent
green plants. So this is also Strixhaven Spirit Week. Zbex on TikTok kind of is doing a whole Spirit Week thing. Yesterday I was dressed in your house or college, Silver Quill, trying to be good at words, a skill that is not really in my set. Today I'm Witherbloom, which is stealing the vibe of me from the Command Zone videos, which are really, really awesome. The last one came out today, Prismari. And then tomorrow is Quandrix, and I'll be in blue-green, and then go through every other day this week. I'm just going to
It was so rad. That was so cool that they wanted to include us in those videos. They're really cool. They did a great job on those videos. They really came out amazing.
I have. If you search Witherbloom on Twitter now in the GIF search bar, I am one of the 3 options. It's me
doing the hair
swoop, and then there's like the Wizards of the Coast animated trailers they did for each college. So
okay,
and then Joe, who we had on the Commander stream a few weeks ago, he's Silver Quill, which was not the Command Zone who did it. Some really cool person who I'm going to look up their name really quick. Angry Fluoride on Twitter just like figured out how to upload GIFs to Twitter's GIF keyboard. So me and Joe now live there on Facebook and Twitter. So that's great.
So if I search Alex Kessler, come up, or do I have to search
Witherbloom or Kess Wiley?
Okay. Here we go. Witherbloom, Kess Wiley. Witherbloom. Excellent. Oh, that's a really good gift to have access to for me. I enjoy that a lot.
I'm really excited. I need to be careful to not use it too much because it's also like a little more flirty than I would normally like to be to any human.
Yes.
So, but for Ben to have it available is problematic for me.
It's really good. All of the gifts of me are Schmodown gifts, and I'm wearing sunglasses, and I looks like 100% of them. So
nice.
That's looking like a real D-bag.
I currently have purple hair in 100% of mine, including this video right now. So we'll continue that. I'm going to dye my hair a different color every day this week. Yesterday was silver. Today is purple. Tomorrow I think I'm doing blue.
Okay.
Or green. I might do green tomorrow.
Is this like a hairspray?
No, I have a special colored gel. It works better than the hairspray because the spray just starts sweating on you. The gel is in your hair like hair gel is. So it's better for your skin and etc. I bought it off of a Facebook ad. I also have color changing versions that I haven't used yet that I'm a little terrified of.
Wow.
But yeah, here we are. That's a lot of non-magic content, and we have a lot of a podcast. We have a lot of cards to go through, so I do want to jump into it. But today we are doing our Strixhaven review part 3, and this is modern specific, so this is our modern Strixhaven set review. Before we do that, please hit the like and subscribe button. The like button, more importantly, that's how these videos do well. Just for some reason, our YouTube video trends haven't been good. I think that's been the case for magic content in general. But you guys who are watching that, they're really helpful. If you're not watching this on YouTube, you're listening to the podcast or somewhere else, please check it out on YouTube. It's really great. Marshall puts all the card art there. We really appreciate subscribers there. It helps us. It's one of the better ways for us to get funding even over podcasts. And so definitely appreciated. Thank you all of our YouTube watchers. And thanks to our patrons, Pinkies Up to House Modern, all of you out there. There's a whole Discord. Discord is actually becoming more populated. You get access to that if you're either a Discord member or a Patreon member or a sub on Twitch. So check those out. And let's get started. First card we're going to talk about today is a card that you and me actually had, I believe, a whole conversation on 2 months ago, not knowing this card was going to exist. But it is a green, blue sorcery, body of research. Create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. Put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of cards in your library. This is actually better than what we were talking about. We were talking about how much would a 2020 vanilla no abilities cost? How much money would you have to spend for that? And I think we came to 4 mana, and it still wouldn't see very much play. 6 mana, you get a 40/40, and it has counters on it, which means that it does things. So somewhere in between is a 2020 vanilla.
Art is interesting. I think the fact that it's a token is one of the reasons that this can exist. There's so many effects that exist in all formats that bounce something. that, and also the destroy things of a certain CMC. Like, so there's enough things that I think exist in different formats. Even if you just want to go as far as like, oh no, I guess Blast Zone comes in with 1 on it. So Blast Zone can't blow up zeros, right?
But Fatal Push can. Fatal Push, Path, and Abrupt Decay are all things that if it was a 6 mana 40/40 versus a token, would not be able to kill it, right? So,
engineered explosives. There's tons. Cryptic Command can bounce it, so it's easy to deal with. Where I really see the value in this card, and you mentioned the tokens thing, my first thought was I had been waiting for a card to come out that was going to make Simic Ascendancy feel exciting to me, because that was like a card that I really wanted to see be good. For those that don't remember, Simic Ascendancy is a blue-green enchantment that does have an ability, but basically states that if you have creatures, I think, with total 20 or more counters, +1/+1 counters on at the beginning of your upkeep, you win the game. So the idea would be that, that's an enchantment, so it's harder to remove in general. You just have that on the battlefield. You're playing a ramp control deck, and then you just cast Body of Research. And as long as you can survive till the next turn with Ascendancy still in play, you just win the game. So I don't know how real of an idea that actually is when you compare it to other things in Modern. I mean, like, Heliod combo decks, like that. There's things in Modern people are doing that are so fast, but it is still a cool thing. It's still a unique thing that now exists. It's a 2-card combo to win the game.
Well, I think just the fractals in general are of some amount of valid consideration there, right? Like the fact that these cards are like a bunch of different ways to put +1/+1 counters on things in pretty large numbers and in some pretty good rates, I think starts making that a lot more fascinating and interesting. I also think
the fact that if you cast this card and make like a 37/37, and then they remove Simic Ascendancy, you still have a 37/37.
Correct.
You have a giant thing to win with.
You have threats on both ends. So they either, I do like it is 6 mana. That's the big problem, but it is also a sorcery. So you get to do stuff like Snapcaster it back or using other ways that cheat instants and sorceries from your graveyard into play. Or just cast them for free. So the fact that it does have like different synergies in different directions is really interesting.
I also imagine a world in which you're playing this card in a deck that's got Simic Ascendancy, Cryptic Command, and Fortification, and basically like you're just sitting there and you're pitching the extra copy of Body of Research that's in your hand to Fortification if you need to. You've got Cryptic Commands to basically just sit there and just hit your land drops. You finally, when you do hit that 6th land, you hold open Cryptic, pass the turn. Now, the next turn you can cast this. And my idea there is that also Cryptic Command then taps all their blockers down. So even if they remove Simic Ascendancy, you still have a Cryptic. You just tap everything down pre-combat and then just attack with Body of Research and you just win the game. So I think there's a viable deck there. I mean, it's a slow deck, but it could win the game.
Oh yeah, I think this is a very cool blue green control win condition. I don't think it's like gonna win a GP at any point, but I do think like if you're looking for something fun to do in Modern, this has a total viability of just killing people, and it's a fun way of going around it for sure. And other than the fact, and especially because it can be blue green, you can not play the fetchless. You have the ability to even do it for pretty low cost for a deck, so a value option. I think it's really cool as a control option for
Flooded Grove. It's a Flooded Grove card if I've ever seen one.
Next card is Magma Opus. 6 blue-red instant. Magma Opus deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of targets. Tap 2 permanents, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token, draw 2 cards, or you can discard it for blue-red, discard Magma Opus, create a treasure token, 6 blue-red. I feel like we talked about this card already.
It was in the initial preview, like when the first ones were coming out. We had a whole conversation about it.
I will say now, having gotten to play even with the elemental version of this card, we did talk about this already. I'm going to have one quick thing. Now having gotten to play them in limited and the red elemental version, and this card has been showing up in standard and historic tournaments already. This mechanic of really big blue-red spell with the treasure alternative cost might be my favorite thing from all of Strixhaven. Not even necessarily from a power level perspective, just like it's cool, it plays well. The fact that you can like build in ways to rebuy them later, but then use the treasure early, and all the other cool things you can do with it is one of the cooler things I think that has come out of this set.
I agree. I think it's one of the better design tools that they've started to employ. I think it's really smart. I'm a big fan.
I want more of them. That would be my.
I
wish it was
surprised.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is something we start to see more of. It seems like a very easy, very, very easy way to balance cards out. So,
All right. Next is Plarg and Augusta. Well, we talked about this with Whitney and everyone else. We did talk about this already. Cool. Just so you know, Ben, if you have anything you want to say, I am an official Plarg Stan account now. I know I'm dressed as Witherbloom. Get ready for Friday when I'm going to be in Lorehold gear, which will be in the past. So check out my Instagram. This card's really good. Better than I thought it was. I had this in Squee in play in our Commander game, and I drew infinite cards with that, which is just a modern legal thing, and discarding Lingering Souls or Faithless Lootings, or not Faithless Looting, RIP, on Burial Rights. This does a really cool Faithless Looting impression that on the backhand, when you draw the Augusta, lets you play Lingering Souls, as it is a lord for your Lingering Souls that you discarded with Plarg. I'm like all about this card.
Yeah, it seems like a really fun, different Mardu deck than the ones we often talk about. I don't think that this is totally the Mardu Pyromancer deck, but similar. I mean, similar idea. This would play well in there.
I don't know. I mean, like it does what looting did, right? It lets you play things into your graveyard. It like plays with the main card you want to do that with. This is Lingering Souls. It is not a spell in Arts and Sorcery, but I have been testing with it, and this card is very powerful. Like,
I guess it's true. You just play Augusta, and all of a sudden your 4 Lingering Souls are just attacking for 8 as opposed to 4. Pretty good.
Right, like and if you draw multiples, it's just because it's legendary, it doesn't matter, because you can play Augusta on the back end and Plarg first, so you play Plarg early. Plarg is also a 2/2 for 2, which is not something I even read when I first was excited by the card. Like, Jace as a 0/2 for 2 was always kind of just like, oh yeah, you can't attack with your looter. That doesn't make sense. And then I had it in play when we were playing our Commander game. It's like, oh, this can attack people. This is just a good aggressive threat early if I don't want to discard cards. Like, it has what Jace doesn't have, which is just like, oh, I want to hurt my opponent with my face. Plarg can do, and Augusta does really well. So like, I have now played this in Historic. I've now played it in Commander, and I've played games even of Modern with it. And in all 3 formats, I've been impressed. This is one of my sleeper hits probably for the set. So much that I'm now talking it with you, even after talking it with Whitney, Tappy, and Carson. Plarg Stan account. I'm going to get at that outfit. We also realized that this is like basically a representation of me and Whitney's relationship. I am Plarg, the Dean of Chaos, and she is Augusta, the Dean of Order. And we're going to have to figure out how to get these outfits made.
Halloween, baby.
Vanishing Verse, white black instant, exile target monocolored permanent.
Card's really good. This card is the I think this card's awesome. I do think this card is kind of like, it's that thing where there's enough now instant and sorcery speed 2-mana cards that do like a really good get rid of something important impression, and they keep printing them in all different sets. Like there was the War of the Spark ones, like D-Spark, and like they just keep coming up with ideas like this. Black Green has gotten like 7 of these in the last few years. I think it's cool. It seems less unique or special because of the fact that all those other cards have now been printed. So when I look at this, I'm like, I guess Black White hasn't gotten this really. I guess Black Green has gotten things that are like this or close to this. So that's why it's valuable. But it does open up the idea that, if there ends up being just like a Black White value control, sort of like the Black Green decks often are in Modern, if that ends up being the case, then this is a valuable card that makes that deck have a lot more reach.
I think both for Mardu and Esper, this is a big deal, right? Like, there hasn't been a lot of good Black-White decks recently, and part of it is just like, other than Lingering Souls and Luros, why? And Luros is often more played as either a black card or a white card. The fact that it's black-white is rarely something that's super relevant. Now, sometimes like there's the black-white taxes, and this is also a big card for there, because being able to exile things and then you can process it with the processor is also good. And there's just not a lot of threats that are gold in the format that you care that much about, that this is going to be that efficient against, right? Like Ren and 6 comes to mind, but 2 mana for a 2 mana removal spell isn't that much better. Like, kind of the list is pretty small. So the fact that this answers most major threats of the format is pretty good. The fact that it doesn't hit artifacts is interesting, right? It can't hit colorless things. But otherwise I'm pretty hyped on it. I think this spell is really good.
I thought about the monocolored thing as it relates to artifacts, and I think that's an interesting piece of it. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine this card being played as a 1 or a 2 of in a lot of the decks you're talking about, and then potentially, depending on where the format is, having more copies of this in your sideboard, just depending on like sort of what you actually have to go up against. But it's pretty efficient, and the fact that it's an instant makes it like that much better.
Right, and the fact that it doesn't give people lands, right? Like, it's in a lot of cases it's better than Assassin's Trophy, and I think that's great. And Esper has been looking for a control card like Assassin's Trophy or Abrupt Decay that just never had access to. And that's also true of Mardu, right? Both have always had that issue. Next card is Lorehold Excavation. Red, white, enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, mill a card. If a land card was milled this way, you gain 1 life. Otherwise, Lorehold Excavation deals 1 damage to each opponent. 5 mana, exile a creature card from your graveyard. Create a tapped 3/2 red and white spirit creature token. So this card is a card that, depending, obviously the deck needs to be built to do this, but it is a card draw engine, right? You're able to mill cards, and hopefully by milling cards you're getting value. But as it's doing it, it is both doing damage and or gaining you life, helping you stabilize slowly over time. And then at the top end offers a great mana sink if you can get to late game of just making 3/2 spirit tokens at will. I've had this in play in limited so far, and I've been really impressed by it. It does a lot of things I like. It feels lingering soulsy, right? You have it early enough that like it just starts getting you value. It might be a little slow for Modern. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a little slow for Modern. I think the incremental value of them taking 1 or you gaining 1 is just not enough to actually make viable having this in play in a game of Modern. Just because it doesn't do anything else until you get to a point where you're like 5 mana for a tap 3/2 is like not very good. It's great if the front half was doing something awesome, but it's just not. So I that's kind of all I have to say. I don't think this card's going to make an impact.
It's cheap enough, and it does generate just enough value that I could see it seeing play, but it is, I think, just beyond the mark. I'll definitely maybe try making it work, and there's a lot of other worlds and formats that I'm going to try making it work, but I think Modern is just below the power level. I'd almost want it to like gain you 2 life, and then I would be like all in.
Yeah, there's even stuff too. There's even stuff too with this card that I think about where I'm like, if this milled the card at the beginning of upkeep, it would like turn on weird things like Spectacle automatically. But the fact that it's end step means that like you don't even get like stuff like Bloodthirst or Spectacle or any of the things that like need you to deal a damage. So I feel like we can.
Yeah. The thing I do like about it happening end step is you get a value immediate, right? Like if you're playing it as a dredge card. Yeah. Next card. Deadly Brew, black, green, sorcery. Each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. If you sacrifice a permanent this way, you may return another permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a really interesting card because it plays like edicts have not currently seen a ton of play. What's cool about this is it lets you use it as a sack outlet that then rebuys you a card from your graveyard. So it does loop, and it lets you get rid of planeswalkers, right? If someone just has a red and 6 in play, this eats it, or another card. It's also in the right colors for this. John doesn't hate having to deal with this, and has stuff that goes in the graveyard and often wants to get rid of a Dark Confidant or whatever. So that's also a benefit. Just like an interesting edict effect and something different that hasn't existed.
Yeah, I definitely think the fact that it's not both of you getting this ability, that it's just you getting the ability to do the cycle rebuy thing is what makes this interesting. And there's just plenty of value town creatures that don't care, or even permanents that don't care if you sacrifice them in Magic's history that make, the ability pretty interesting. I mean, everything from like a kitchen things to like landfall and like wanting to get back a fetch land by sacrificing a land. So like, just stuff like that. Yeah,
the fact that it can get any permanent, so you can like play something that you have no problem sacrificing, or just not play anything, right? You can't, and then
I'm sorry, you can't sacrifice a land to get back a land. But like, no. Yeah, if it is a landfall deck, if you're playing this with Tracker and you want to sacrifice your creature and get back the fetch land, then that fetch land gets you so much more value. I think there's cool stuff here in John.
Yeah, or just like any 2-drop that you don't care. Like in Aristocrats, more of an Aristocrats play, sacrifice that creature and then rebuy your land to ramp is like great because that creature generally will generate value. Next card is Thrilling Discovery. This is a big one. Red, white, sorcery. You gain 2 life, then you may discard 2 cards. If you do, draw 3 cards. This is a cathartic reunion that gains you 2 life for no reason, for some reason.
Yeah.
I've already seen people playing this in Dredge and Modern. It's already made an impact.
Yeah, I think also so it's interesting here. You gain 2 life, then you may discard 2 cards if you do draw 3 cards. So it is interesting that you don't have to use this card for anything other than gaining the life, which I'm not sure like how relevant that is. But the fact that you have the optionality, if you have a hand that you don't want to let go and you draw this and like you're getting beaten down, it can kind of fog on some level in some cases to keep you back in it for an extra turn.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of situations where this card is like you top deck it, you're neck and neck with your opponent, and you just don't have the 2 cards in hand, right? You're just at that point of the game, you've become hellbent. This allows you to at least use it to help. It's also something that with in like if we wanted, instead of playing it in a dredge deck, playing it in a Mardu Aristocrats or a Mardu Pyromancer deck, this triggers Pyromancer. This triggers all your Magecraft and prowess abilities. And so sometimes late game, you don't want to discard your cards, but you just want to trigger prowess, and being able to like gain life and then make your Swift Spears and your whatever the new white 1 mana 0/2 step links for spells is, and get a young Pyromancer token for just 2 life and do that. There are games that's worth it. It's a nice fail case.
Also, Cathartic Reunion's great, and it's the best version of what it is. So now you have 8 of them.
Yep. And this might be better than Cathartic. This is, I mean, other than the fact that you need a white mana, this is better. If you can cast this in Cathartic Reunion, this is a better card. The next card we're talking about is Jadzi, Oracle of Archivios, and Journey to the Oracle. Jadzi is a 6 blue legendary creature, human wizard, 5/5. Discard a card, return Oracle of Archivius to its owner's hand from play. Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it by paying 1 rather than paying its mana cost. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. The backside, Journey to the Oracle, is 2 green. You may put any number of lands from your hand onto the battlefield. Then, if you control 8 or more lands, you may discard a card. If you do, return Journey of the Oracle to its owner's hand. People are really hyped about this card. At one point, I believe, and I don't know if it still is, it was the most expensive card, non-special promo version of it in the set. I think it's more for the Journey to the Oracle side. It definitely has some commander vibes, right? Like as a commander, this does really powerful things. Journey to the Oracle, like I got in some conversations about it. I think this is worse than Scapeshift and maybe better than, but maybe the land one that put any amount of lands from your graveyard. Sorry, the graveyard one. Any amount of lands in your graveyard into play. I think that card's still better and sees no modern play. It's definitely worse than Scapeshift. There's some shenanigans you can do with it.
Well, so I can't see a world in which, like, I really like the Journey to the Oracle side. I think the design here is really beautiful between these 2 sides. I think it's one of the coolest pieces of front back designs that we've seen in the set. I really like that. However, spending 8 mana to get this creature onto the battlefield basically ever is just not something that I can ever see happening in Modern. So then the back half of Journey is just like, if you like, so you would have to have some engine that they're not already aware of that would make playing Journey more than 1 time something other than just like.
Would you play Summer Bloom for 4 mana? Because this is what this is, right? This is better than that. Like you don't get the loop. The problem you miss is if you have 1 bounce land, you can't just keep playing it. I don't think it has to all happen at once. But if you have 3 lands in your hand in Scapeshift in an Amulet Titan deck or 2, you can play this as a Summer Bloom effect. A expensive one, but that card's banned for a reason, right? And is currently making do with like 1-drops that do it, and that you have like creatures that tap.
I think that deck got so good off of the printing of Dryad of the Elysian Grove anyway. Like, I don't actually think that this is even particularly necessary.
Sure.
Like a 4 mana big spell. I think this is totally cool. I like it. I think it's interesting. And again, the art also is pretty amazing on both sides, but
the other thing to talk towards is if you can make use of Journey of, like, there is a version of the world where just having an 8 mana creature in your graveyard for some reason, like cards that care about the converted mana cost of whatever, is maybe viable. And the fact that you can cast the sorcery half just to get it into your graveyard, the sorcery half is playable, and then now this is in your graveyard. But yeah, I don't think this is that excellent. It's crazy how high it's pre-ordering for, but I definitely don't think this is the business. And those, what we just described, are the best case scenarios, and as Ben said, pretty much all of them are worse than there are better cards. Next card is Mavinda, Student's Advocate, 2 and a white legendary creature, Bird Advisor, 2/3 flying. You may cast target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard this turn. If that spell doesn't target a creature you control, it costs 8 more to cast this way. If that spell would be put into your graveyard, exiled instead. Activate only once each turn. It is a flying 2/3 Bird Advisor.
Let me ask you a question on this card.
Yeah.
First question: 8 more. Is that in reference to some piece of the story I'm missing? It's a very prohibitive cost. It's very expensive. I understand that it's there to keep you from having a white, like, reusable Snapcaster Mage, unless it's for like heroic purposes, kind of. I have no idea.
No, Not that I know of. There's no significance to the number 8. There is in limited. There is a lot of, if you have 8 lands or more in play, things turn on. There's like a in play threshold that this might be. I know that there was conversations that threshold was a mechanic, or there was like a spell threshold that existed, and this could be a continuation of that. I think it just was like in testing. That was the number they came to on. It'll be cool if they do this once in a while, but the point of this is to target creatures with the spell you're using so that you can, what's cool about it is Cryptic Command can be used with this to counter a spell, right? Because you target the bird with the bounce.
Oh, activate only once each turn. It's not at sorcery speed. For some reason, I was thinking this only could be activated on your turn.
No. Yeah, I'm pretty sure if this is in play, you can rebuy Cryptic Commands, as well as a number of any charm that can, any command that targets a creature you control and then does something you want. You can use this bird to rebuy in a dope way.
doesn't target a creature you control. You're right. Yeah, Mavinda. If you're playing Mavinda with Cryptic Command and like some ETB value creatures that you're actually happy to
like Snapcaster Mage and Eternal Witness, like this does it. You could do a blue-white Mavinda Snapcaster Mage version of the Cryptic Command decks that you used to use Eternal Witness for, and Eternal Witness is always just like kind of almost not good enough. Mavinda is like a 2/3 flyer for 3, which is better, and then also like just play some of the like random cantrips that target your creatures, right? Like target creature gets +1/+0 and draw a card. Is like a card that exists, or whatever. So that's sweet. I didn't even think about that until I just thought about it on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's also stuff like if you wanted to play this in a black, white, red deck, you could so Kolaghan's Command at the very least is rebuyable by just dealing 2 to Mavinda if it's the only creature you have.
That's true.
Then get the other half of Kolaghan's Command.
It's risky.
Rebuy Kolaghan's Command to get back a creature. I mean, but there's enough. There's enough things you could be doing with charms and commands. I think commands are where that's to me where I see this as being the absolute sweetest, because a lot of commands have a modal function where they target a creature and you also get some other value.
Like the green white one is also good because it fights and then
doesn't it put a counter on target? Doesn't it put a counter on target creature you control?
Yeah,
that's
I think so.
Dope, actually.
The blue green one does that too, right?
Really cool.
The Quandrix one, you can also. I mean, what else it does is kind of lame. The other thing that this works with is just like feather decks, right? Like that's the thing people thought of immediately is the red-white legend from War of the Spark, which is kind of always close to being a real thing, just because it has such a powerful draw engine of every time you target with something, you return it to your hand. And Mavinda being able to be a second one, so you can now play 4 feather, 2 Mavinda, but then also them together is really powerful because you can rebuy the spells you played early game to hit feather, and then it comes back to your hand. So I think there's a lot of really cool shenanigans you can do, and Mavinda is just going to be a powerful engine for that. It's 3 mana, which is a lot, but it does so many cool things, and even some free stuff that I think it's cool.
Oh my god, you know what deck I want to play this in? My green-white Highlander deck. My all-in pump deck. That's so sick.
It's so also good. It's also important. It's a creature you control. So even as a weird sideboard out of Infect, which is already playing Noble Hierarch, so it's already splashing white. Bringing this out of the sideboard allows you to rebuy your pump spells to retarget your Infect creatures, or just Mavinda. This is a 2/3 flyer. Sometimes there has been many a game of Infect that I've lost to, of someone just being like, you know what? You killed all my Infect creatures. I got this Noble Hierarch right here, and I'm just going to pump it until the 14 damage I need to kill you because you've been fetching lazily this whole game, thinking that Infect's not going to kill you. And then Mavinda just being a sideboard card, just now I get to rebuy those. It builds I think there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Mavinda in the format. The fact that it's any creature you can control and not just them is really good.
Yeah.
Next card is Milo, Crafty Companion, and Luca, Wayward Bonder. Milo, Crafty Companion is 1/1 white 2/3. Whenever an opponent attacks one or more planeswalkers you control, put a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. Whenever a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability and opponent controls, you may draw a card. 4 red for Luca, 5 planeswalker loyalty. You may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. If a creature card was used to discard this way, draw 2 cards instead. Return -2, which is the important half. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of your next upkeep. -7, you get an emblem with whenever a creature enters the battlefield under you control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. The real conversation here is this is another reanimation sneak attack effect that has a relatively decent charm upside, right? Like you can play 4 of these, play Mila early game to protect yourself, protect permanents you control, be able to be aggressive with it. And then once you get the right cards into your graveyard, 6 mana, reanimate Grizzlebrand, reanimate Elish Norn. You know, it plays its own little reanimation game that I think is really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I like the front half. It's cool. It has like some like Leovold vibes to it on some level. You know, it has some of that type of stuff to it. But I do think that the back half of Luca being a sneak attack style like reanimation, it does cost 6. I mean, like that is.
Well, but it's not dead in your hand at 6, right? Like the problem with 6 mana spells normally is they sit in your hand and they don't do anything and then you die. The fact that 90% of the time you just cast the front half as a decent aggressive creature that protects your other threats. And then late game, when you've been able to control the game to get to 6 mana, you have the Luca option. That's what's interesting to me, right? Like obviously, if this was just Luca, not playable. Just like straight up, if that was the only card option. But the fact that you get a good value creature that you can tutor for too, right? Like you could just play 1 Mila and then just have a way to get it into your hand and then just put Luca into play when you or like and then if you draw it late game or when you tutor for it, you get Luca into play. That's to me what's exciting by it is not necessarily the reanimation effect by itself, but the fact there's a creature that late game becomes a reanimation effect that is powerful.
A little skeptical for Modern,
sure.
but I do think it's close. I think it's really sweet for Commander. I'll tell you that much. I think as a Commander, this is really fun. So, but that's not what we're talking about. So I think for Modern, it's right on the edge.
Next card are Rowan, Scholar of Sparks, and Will, Scholar of... Oh, we talked about these already. Did we do Rowan and Will?
We did Onyx. We did Onyx for sure. I don't think we did Rowan and Will.
We did Onyx and Kazmina.
The print on these is so small.
Oh, and you can look them up while I'm reading. It might make life easier. 2 red, Legendary Planeswalker Rowan. Instants and sorcery spells you cost 1 less. When Rowan, Scholar of Sparks deals 1 damage to each opponent. If you've drawn 3 or more cards this turn, it deals 3 damage to each opponent instead as a +1. -4, you get an emblem with whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may pay due to. If you do copy the spell, you may choose new targets. Will is 4 and a blue for 4 mana. Will, Legendary Planeswalker Will. Instants and sorcery spells you cost 1 less to cast. So both of them have that same opening ability, and then he has 3 abilities. +1, up to 1 target creature has base power and toughness 0-2 until end of turn. So it fogs a creature. -3, draw 2 cards. -7, exile up to 5 target permanents. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller creates a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. So 3 mana Planeswalker. 3 mana Planeswalker with a static ability. All of your instant sorceries are less expensive. 3 mana Planeswalker with that ability that after turn 5 in colors that can get to turn 5 comes with a much better Planeswalker that lets you bubble a creature, basically acts as a removal spell or can draw 2 cards. On the other hand, Rowan doesn't do anything. Her +1 is actively bad.
I think that's the biggest problem. I think that this is a really cool Planeswalker. I like this Planeswalker. It's a Planeswalker I have a feeling I'll try to build with in decks. I love cost reducers, for instance, in sorceries. I think they're great. I think the problem is that the 3 mana Rowan to get to the emblem is going to take several turns that you probably will not get to. And that the Will side, if what you're really doing is playing this for the Will side, there are too many good 5 mana Planeswalkers and 4 mana Planeswalkers I don't even see play for me to believe that Will would be able to be better than them for Modern. I think these are really cool Planeswalkers. I don't think these are powerful enough.
It sucks that this card came out the same within 3 months of Bergie. Right? Like, I want to play that card over this card 90% of the time. The fact that it generates a mana versus makes things cheaper is more abusable. The fact that its backhand draws you a bunch of cards in a really cool way. Like, I think Bergie, however you want to say it, God of Boasts or whatever, is just like a better version than this card. To the extent that I wish Wizards reevaluated what this card did to... And obviously it's for like, because for limited it's probably awesome, but for standard even I don't know if I would ever play this over other options. And they came out within 3 months. There's never a standard environment where these don't exist in the same environment as Bergie.
I even think like just if you're talking about these characters in the game and the cards that represent them, I like the Royal Scions so much more. Like it was not even close.
Yep. Actually, the only of the 4 walkers in the set The only of them, the one I'm most disappointed by. Because Luke is dope. We just talked about it. Back half is amazing. Is cool. Really interesting. Great in like a Jeskai Super Friends deck even, which we didn't talk about. Kasmina, also really cool. Breaks the game in half in some ways. Liliana goes infinite with cards in Commander. And then on top of that, just is like a very powerful value 6-drop. And in some ways better than the other 6-drop Liliana. This one I just like. There are better cards in every direction.
This is not the first double-sided Planeswalker, is it?
This is the first modal dual-face Planeswalker. It's going to be interesting. The one thing that this does better than Bergie, at least in Standard, is it's Will's +1. In fact, Will's +1 on this card is the make or break it version of this card. Up to one target creature getting base power of 0/2 until end of turn, a viable way of protecting yourself. And if it is, then Will and Rowan could be a playable card. That's kind of where it's going to come down to.
Yeah, it's pretty fringe. I think we can move on.
Yeah. I'm not super worried about it. Next card is Dragon's Guard Elite. 1 green creature human druid magecraft. Whenever you cast a copy or instant sorcery spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Dragon's Guard Elite. 4 green, double the number of +1/+1 counters on Dragon's Guard Elite. How Cephalid Breakfast, right? That's the deck has come. What's the Dryad of something?
Yeah, you're talking about
not Cephalid Breakfast.
Yeah, with Quirion.
Yeah, how Quirion. Thank you. How far has Quirion Dryad come? Because I believe that's a 1/1 for 2. Whenever you cast a red, blue, green spell or whatever, you get a counter.
Whenever you cast a spell that is not green, you put a counter on it. I love that card.
And this is a 2/2 instead of a 1/1. And it's only spells and instants and sorceries, but that's better.
Yeah, cast or copy an instant sorcery, put a counter on it. Yeah, just a 2-mana 2/2. Like this card, I'm all about this card. Like this is so the kind of card I like playing. And honestly, for Modern, probably you just play both. You probably just play 4 of these and you play 4 of the other one, and you play lots of cantrips and you play Force of Negation and you play Spell Pierce, and maybe like I don't even know if you bother playing Tarmogoyf. You probably don't. You probably just play
play Tarmogoyf over Quirion Dryad, but I would play this in that deck over Tarmogoyf.
No, why would you? If the whole entire idea of the deck is that
bad. It also dies the lightning bolt a lot quicker. You need more spells to get it past lightning bolt than this.
I mean, like, so on average, when you play a Tarmogoyf in a game of Magic, it's like a 4/5. Like in Modern, I'd say, like maybe I think 4/5 probably. Later in the game, it's bigger, but like 4/5 is probably like your comfortable size. You're going to be like
4/5
most of the early going in a game. And like
Land
if you're talking about
sorcery,
a turbo deck, like if you're talking about a turbo deck, like that a card like this would be good in, you're going to get to 4/5 in like a turn or two, and then it's just going to go up from there. It's
I like this card. I like Dragon's Guard Elite more than Tarmogoyf. I'm saying Quirion Dryad I don't like.
No, I get it. I'm just saying I think Quirion Dryad gets a lot bigger. I think Quirion Dryad gets big fast.
You're also because it doesn't trigger on green cards. Like 2 of the cards you're talking about having 8 of don't trigger with it. Like there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that Dragon's Guard Elite works with that are good with Dragon's Guard Elite. There's a lot of things that Quirion Dryad like turns off in a weird way. Like it's only like Quirion Dryad is a splash card, and which means you can't play this, right? I think that's
that's a fair point. It's a fair point you make. Card's sweet though.
Nice. Next card is also sweet. This is a card that I feel like the world would have been like, this is the red 2-drop. We found it. And now no one cares. And like Clark's out there just kicking his butt. So Conspiracy Theorists, 1 red creature human shaman. When Conspiracy Theorist attacks, you may pay 1 and discard a card. If you do, draw a card. When you discard 1 or more non-land cards, you may exile 1 of them from your graveyard. If you do, you may cast it this turn. 2/2. So this is sweet. It allows you to
really
loot cards, which just on its own is good as it attacks, but the ability that feels like it's breaking the game is whenever you discard 1 or more non-land cards, you may exile 1 of them from your graveyard. If you do, you may cast it this turn. The fact that you could use loot effects, like discarding cards is normally a cost. Conspiracy Theorist lets you turn that cost into just drawing an extra card. So in many ways, it's whenever you discard a card, draw a card. And it's dope.
Well, here's the thing about this card. So let's just pretend you play this on turn 2. And you attack and you discard Lightning Bolt. And now you pay 1 and you cast your Lightning Bolt as you discard it. And you bolt them for 2 and you draw a card.
Bolt them for 3.
Now you have 1 mana open. What?
3? Oh, bolt them for 2 mana.
2 mana. It's cost you Incinerate to Lightning Bolt them, but you got the card from your graveyard. You sort of reverse Snapcaster Maged it kind of.
Well, no, not even that. You attacked and you spent 2 mana to draw a card and lightning bolt someone.
Yeah, I mean, so like I think it's the fact that you have to spend the mana to discard it and you have to spend the mana on the spell is the part of this where I think there's a lot of moving pieces to make this work, because you have to be able to profitably attack. I plan on never.
That's not true. The plan is to play this with other cards that discard.
Whenever you discard one of one cards. Oh, okay. There you go. I was missing a piece of this equation.
The fact that when he attacks, he loots, gravy. Like 2 mana for a 2/2 that lets you +1 with Liliana and then cast that Thoughtseize that you just discarded is all I need out of him.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so I missed that. So yeah, this card is really, really, really good. You don't have to attack. I was looping all of the abilities together for this to work, and they are separate. This card's really good, man. This card is exceptionally good.
For our audio listeners, I did read all of the abilities at once, and it could have sounded like it was one ability. Yes, so the first ability of when it attacks, you may pay 1 to discard a card. If you do, draw a card is a ability on its own, and then as a secondary ability, at all times, if you were to discard one or more non-land cards, you may exile one of them. And if you do, you get to cast it that turn. That does mean if you were to, like, for instance, if you were to cast Faithless Looting and you were to discard 2 cards, you can't cast both of them. You have, per discard moment, you have to select one to be able to cast for free. But +1 on Liliana the Veil, you get to cast that card now that turn and is on curve to do so. Any other discard looting Plarg, you get to cast that card. So it just works with a lot of cool cards in a way that it feels broken to me.
Yeah, that's really good.
Next card. Archmage Emeritus. Creature, human, wizard, magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. It's a 2/2. That's it. They printed that card. This card exists now. I don't know if it exists. There had to have been a prowess draw card whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell.
So here's the issue. Here's the issue with this card. I think this card is really cool, but they've done this card with other types, and they're fine. They're like totally fine. Like they get the job done. Like for instance, Beast Whisperer in Elves is a card that sees play. Like that's an elf that sees play. People play that card in elf decks. It's good. They have made this card 2 different times for artifacts. There are plenty of 0 and 1 mana artifacts that exist that you could like chain and loop together and draw yourself cards. That's what this is. It's a 4 mana 2/2 that every time you cast a cantrip or a counterspell, you draw a card. And that's good. But if you think about it, it's super killable. And it's a 4 mana spell that, like, how is this like think about all the things that cost 4 in blue that are like a card a turn at least and are super good, right? Like Jace the Mind Sculptor, for instance, is not played as much as it used to get played. This is not as good as Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Well, different decks, right? Like Jace, you play in decks that are about protecting Jace, controlling the game, and eventually winning through value. You play this deck in Storm. This is a Storm card, and that is it. Like the fact that, like, if I untap with this, every ritual I cast draws me a card. Like you can lose if you're playing Storm, and they let you untap with this card. But the chances of you losing with this card in play in a deck that has that type of play style is so low. Now it might be win more, right? Like Storm getting to turn to untap with a 4 mana creature is like really low in general.
Before though, you and I have talked about this before, that's a deck. Storm's a deck that comfortably plays 4 mana sorcery speed things as part of its game plan. We've seen them play Past in Flames for years. We know that we've seen them play Gifts Ungiven to set up chains before. 4 mana is not out of the question for that deck by any means.
As its third spell or second spell of its chain, this card's insane, right? Like, if I can cast this into a ritual, if I can get to 6 mana off of rituals, and then cast this, and then that same turn holding priority, start casting rituals, that seems bonkers.
Yeah, I guess you're correct that, I mean, you're definitely, whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, so that means that as Storm goes off, you draw for all of those copies.
You can short your grape shots. So you can, like, if you like get to 5 Storm count and you have grape shot and you just don't have any more cards in hand, you can just grape shot them and then you'll draw 5 cards.
Yeah, so that's really cool. The Magecraft aspect of this is what makes it better than all of those like other things I'm talking about. But my point, I think, still is intact, which is that in general, those cards that I'm talking about exist and work well enough. But 4 mana for a very vulnerable creature to be part of that chain is good, not incredible, interesting. I'll be curious to see if this works. If they had made this cost blue, blue 1 and it was a 0/1, then I would be like blown away. Even if it cost blue 1 and it was a 0/1, I think I would be blown away. But the fact that it's blue 2 is exactly correct in terms of what it needs to cost to be fair, and makes it just outside the realm of like, wow. It's like, this is cool.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, I think it's on the line. I think I don't think you're wrong that it is extremely fragile and easy to deal with. And if you like do your thing as Storm and this is where you get to, and then they're able to respond. But there's enough priority holding with this card that you might be able to get there, or just get enough value that it's worth it. And it does help you get out of stuff when you're behind. Yeah, I think it's really comparable to Joyra. I think it's better than Joyra. I think like the artifact, the difference between this and Joyra is that the artifacts you need to play to make Joyra good are bad cards. And like similar to Arclight Phoenix, the cards you need to play that make this guy good in Storm are good cards and is like already a deck. So you're benefited more, I think, here. But yeah, it's definitely on the line. The next card is Strict Proctor, 1 white creature spirit cleric. Flying, whenever a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability to trigger, counter that ability unless its controller pays 2. It's a 1/3. This is your flying 1/3 for 2 whatever stone.
Yeah, I don't think we talked about this card. You're thinking of a Torpor Orb.
Torpor
is
Orb.
the
not
card
throwing stone. Torpor Orb. Yes, we have not talked about this
card.
card.
This card's really good. The whole deal with the hate bears, and as they print more and more of them, is that number one, when they have a relevant creature type like Spirit, I think that pushes it into a different territory of awesome. And then the second one is when they have evasion, they're even better. And when they have evasion and a higher level of toughness to like hold a sword or something like that, like anytime it's not just like the parallel, like a 2/2, for instance, or a 1/1, like 1/3 or 3/1 is like a super, super interesting thing to do. I think this card's really good. I think like this is a card that I could see myself building around. And depending on the format that you're playing in, like what the format looks like at that time, this card I think could be very, very, very effective. I think this, in my opinion, this is one of the more exciting cards in the set.
Hushwing something, right? That's the other one of the creature versions.
Hushwing Griff, but that one costs white 2.
What's
3?
Wasn't there a Eldraine fairy in white that also
Hushbringer? Hushbringer was the one you're thinking of. Creatures entering the battlefield do not cause abilities to trigger. Creatures dying do not cause abilities to trigger. It's a 1/1 lifelink for 2.
So the fact that you have both of these, because to me what's interesting about these cards has always been obviously shutting down your opponent's trigger effects, and sometimes it's just like very valuable, but more it's turning off the negative ETB effects that you have, and the fact that you can now play 8 of these, all creatures, and then you can play stuff like the hunted whatevers that Ben likes to play, or just like a select like Phyrexian Dreadnoughts and Legacy, things that have a like powerful negative effect on cast that allows you to, and that's supposed to keep them in check. These let you turn them off, which is really powerful. And now you have 8 of them. 2 mana efficient flyers is like a whole other thing. I think they're really cool that there's now 2 of these effects. And the fact that this one late game for 2 mana, you can start turning some of those effects on if you need them, is also interesting. Though it does let your opponents do that.
I want to play 4 Strict Proctor, 4 Hushbringer, and then I want to play 4 Eater of Days in my deck. Do you remember that card, Eater of Days?
No.
It's from Darksteel. It's a flying 9/8 trample artifact creature for 4 mana. And it states that when it enters the battlefield, you skip your next 2 turns.
Got it.
9/8 flying trample for 4. Sounds pretty good.
Well, I mean, what's cool about it, and all of these cards, is that like they're also good hate cards, right? You like there are a lot of decks that are just like, oh, I guess my Stoneforge Mystic doesn't trigger anymore. Oh, I guess my Snapcaster Mage doesn't trigger anymore. I guess my Primeval Titan doesn't trigger anymore. Like, there's enough real threats in the format that turning them off is good. And then add the layer of like, what are the best creatures to break for? And actually, honestly, in comments below, I'd love to see if you guys know any cool creatures that you'd want to turn off.
Doesn't Heliod Combo requires you to gain life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not forgetting something.
Yes.
Right?
It doesn't have an ETB, though. None of the effects are ETB. You need Heliod and Walking Ballista.
Oh, because it just deals damage to itself and it has lifelink and it gets the
It doesn't have to deal damage to itself. You give it lifelink, and then when it does damage or something, it gains life. Putting a +1 counter on it goes infinite.
Okay. Yeah. The old combo decks this would shut down, not those ones.
Yeah. This is really good against Malera combo decks. Not good against any of the new versions of the green-white combos.
It's like nobody really plays those decks anymore though.
Well, the Heliod deck is still one of the most played decks of the format.
No, I'm saying that. The
Malera Finks combos, yes. Elite Spellbinder. 2 white creature, human cleric, flying. When Elite Spellbinder enters the battlefield, look at the target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast. It is a flying 3/1. This has a lot of Kitchen Finks, not Kitchen Finks. Vidilian Click vibes. This is the world championship card for Paulo Vitor Dama de Rosa. So he helped design this card, and his image is what the art is of.
That's awesome.
And it's a cool white discard effect. That's different than normal. It does let them still cast it, but it does make it cost 2 more. So it has that kind of effect to it. And in decks that don't have access to black or blue, like a white-red deck that wants an aggressive flyer that wants some way to lock their opponent's hands out is an option. It also is a human, so it's like a third option for Kite Sail freebooter. It's kind of like
Yeah, I think it's probably good in humans, but I also think the reality of that is that it costs 3 and you're fighting for spots at 3. I mean, there's a lot of good things in humans that have come out over the last few years, that whether you're talking about like Militia Bugler, or you're talking about like, Mantis Rider being one of the staples of that deck for years. So I think this is really good, but it would have competition in the 3 slot. There's that, what's the triple colored black, white, green one that four like human 4/4 for 3 that whenever creatures are placed in your opponent's graveyards, exile them. I can't think what it's called right now. Anyway, there's enough things in the 3 slot that I think that this card is totally real, but I also think that it would be fighting for space. But I think that card is like the definition of tempo, and it's white tempo, which is really cool.
Next card is Secret Rendezvous. 1 white, sorcery. You and target opponent each draw 3 cards. I want to talk about this card, not necessarily due to its power level in Modern, because I don't think this is Modern playable, but it is pure white card draw. We now have a card that reads target player, a white card that I can play that lets me draw 3 cards. It makes my opponent draw 3 cards. But in the past, there's ways to get around that, right? That's not something that has historically been, Narset exists as a card, for example. And now if you're a Narset, do you need a white spell that draws 3 cards for 3 mana? I don't know. But it also is something that Wizards has now said is this is a white color pie effect that they are going to look into and see if they can play with. It is built more for Commander in mind. That was one thing that Morrow stated in his article, that like basically what's cool about this is in constructed where it could be problematic, it's an even keel draw. For 1v1, this doesn't warp the format. But in multiplayer, I as a white player now may cast this and target anyone but Ben, so that Ben has less cards than me and my friend, and we can beat up on Ben because we've now made a deal because I gave them 3 cards. So it's exciting. It's cool. I still think 3 mana draw 3 cards is maybe still under power level for that format even, but it is something they've said that this is now within color pie. This is something their space they're playing, and I'm excited to see. Like I could imagine me playing a 2 mana draw 2 cards, target opponent draws 2 cards in Modern. I think that's like an actual playable white card, or even similar, like 1 mana draw a card, target opponent draws a card, scry 2. There's stuff in that world that I would play. So I wonder where they go with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's other stuff too that I was thinking you could do in Commander that also works in Modern. I could imagine end of turn 4, flashing in Notion Thief end of turn, or even doing it like during their turn at some point to like steal a card, and then on my turn casting this and holding open a counter spell, so that when they try to get rid of Notion Thief in response, I can still counter it and I just draw 6. That seems pretty nuts. I guess I draw 5, they draw 1.
But like, as far as a rate goes, there's not a lot of draw 3 for 3. Most things are. Yeah. There are some, like, there are close ones. There's the new blue-red card that late game, you exile a card, you put 1 card on the bottom of your deck, and you draw a card. And like those 3 things combined is almost draw 3 cards for 2 mana.
There's like Painful Truths. There's conditional ones where it's like 3 mana draw 2, and then if some condition is met, like Ascend or something, like City's Blessing, There are like things like that where you can draw 3.
Painful Truth saw Modern play. I mean, not a lot, but it was definitely a card inside. But Harmonize definitely saw Modern play back in the day. I mean, just better effects have come out, mostly in the form of Planeswalkers. But I think like draw 3 for 3 is a better rate than we currently have on any card in Modern. And the question is this playable enough? Does this work? And I'm excited to see where that ends up.
I mentioned Notion Thief, but there's also an Narset, as you mentioned. There's a lot of things that exist that are good that make this card really busted. Yep. Like plenty of them. You know, there are plenty of them.
And like what I can imagine, because Red did the same thing, right? There is a 3 mana, I think 2 in a red. You exile the top 3 cards of the library. You can cast them this turn. Never saw any play, right? But that effect eventually became tons of playable red cards that are amazing and do really cool things. I can also imagine this is that, right? We're going to see a Planeswalker that's pluses, each player draws a card, or you and one other player draw a card. And like that card might be playable in white, right? Like that's like, there's a way like with Lantern Control to mitigate how good the cards your opponents are drawing. And there's a way, or just like being able to see what's in their top of their library with other cards like Lantern, that then you can use it, right? You can be like, oh, I don't want them to draw that card. I'll minus the Planeswalker this turn, or, you know, whatever, what have you. So I think this effect in white's going to be fascinating moving forward. Cody Vociferous Codex. Nailed it. 3 mana legendary artifact creature construct. You can't cast permanent spells. 4 tap, add white, blue, black, red, green. So you ramp 1 spell with 4 mana. When you cast your next spell this turn, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile an instant or sorcery card with lesser mana value. Until end of turn, you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Put each other card exiled this way on the bottom of your library in random order. Some things that people have already mentioned on this card that are really cool. I've seen a lot of people talking about it for Pox decks, mono black discard decks, because you're already not playing very many permanents, and this allows you to start just drawing cards with it. The other thing that I really liked is people donating this. So using Bazaar Trader or donate or gift, the red gift. Generous gift to give it to your opponent so they no longer can cast spells and you lock them out of the game unless they have removal. And the fact that it does, like, there's a version of this deck where you just play a lot of not instants and sorceries and you just get to cascade into stuff for free. That the ramp and value engine on the bottom end is really powerful. And a 3 mana 1/4 is pretty good at blocking. It's not the worst thing to have in play in front of you. Also, it's a grumpy book that yells facts at you.
This card feels like a flavor card that like probably has some application I'm missing, but for the most part, you're describing to me like most of the conditions you're talking about are pretty specific for this card to be anything other than just cute and fun. But it is cute and fun. I'll give you that.
I think the fact that like mono black Pox decks are a deck that people do play, and this is a card that is good in there, makes it on its own just something worthy of consideration to talk about. Everything else I mentioned is like a meme deck, but I would love to generous gift someone a Cody. Just get them.
Yeah, for sure.
And as cards are printed in the future that are like, this is one of the best generous gift like effects, and they will print more cards that give stuff, right? And at one point, maybe they do print something that's good enough that with Cody, you can lock people out of the game.
So let's just really quickly look up spells that cost Wooburg. Instants and sorcery. It's because you can't cast, so it's got to be an instant or sorcery, right?
Well, but it also lets you, and then cascade, right? So you can just cast.
Well, but you can't cast. Still requires you to cast without paying its casting cost. So if it's a permanent spell, you can't cascade into a permanent.
Whoa, right? But you can cast like a 3 mana spell. You can cast Scape Shift, and then it will just it'll cascade into any 3-drop. That's a spell. Simone Quandrix Prodigy, legendary creature, human wizard. 1, tap it. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. 4 mana, tap it. Draw a card. If you control 8 or more lands, draw 2 cards instead. And it's a 1/2 creature. The fact that this does once again, Summer Bloom effect, right? You can use this to just basically add an additional, with the bounce land, start doing your bounce trigger, getting that extra mana into play that you need. The fact that it enters the battlefield tap is, with Amulet of Vigor no longer matters, has its benefits as well. And late game, she's a decent card draw engine. For 4 mana, you get to draw 2 cards or draw a card is a playable effect on its own. So as a one of in Scape Shift decks, I've seen it talked about, or Amulet decks, just because she works so well with the different game plans.
Is she just, I correct me if I'm wrong here, the commander card Thrasios, isn't this a very similar card to Thrasios? No?
No. Thrasios is 4 mana, just 4 mana, scry 1, draw a card.
Isn't this a modern legal version? I thought this was like a modern legal version of a commander, is what I seem to remember reading. I saw somebody tweeting about. Maybe not. I think this card's cool.
Thrasio 5. It's also very powerful. Like, it's a powerful commander, right? Like this. Yeah. I don't know if it's as powerful as the other blue-green options that are out there. The amount of good blue-green lands commanders is too high.
I don't know. I mean, I think this card is so much more in my wheelhouse of what I would play. Like, and because this card costs 2, I really like it.
Yeah. It's really easy to protect. You can recast it for again and again and again in Commander. I think it has real modern consideration, right? The fact that it does work so well in 2 decks that exist already. Is this better? Isn't there, what's the one green snake? I always forget its name. Puts a land into play from your hand. Sakura Tribe Scout. Sakura Tribe Scout. The fact that the fact that Amulet Titan decks are playing Sakura Tribe Scout, and they could play 3 of those and 1 of this, and then this is just so much better to draw late game, or if your opponent's been able to remove your creatures because it draws you cards, to me is just on its own something worthy of consideration. And then and as a different option there. Killian Ink Duelist. White, black, legendary creature, human, warlock, lifelink, menace. This creature can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Spell you cast that target a creature, cost 2 less to cast. This is another one that works in that flyer buddy that I'm forgetting the name of already.
Yep.
Owl friend that Marshall is putting somewhere around my head. Maybe flying around, just like a owl would. Feather, maybe also. Maybe it's like the 2 birds, like in old cartoons, flying around someone's head.
There's an old green card that I love that you probably remember called Spellwild Oof. Talked about this card before. It's a 1/3 for 1 and green from Future Sight, uncommon. Spells that target Spellwild Oof cost 2 less to cast.
Okay.
I'd always wanted to build a Spellwild Oof aura deck. That was like a thing for years I tried doing, except that all removal on Spellwild Oof is just cheaper. Not that it matters because all removal Modern costs 1 anyway. But you could play Killian with Spellwild Oof now, and now you legitimately do have 8 copies of something that comes down on turn 2 that makes your angelic favor or your sick, whatever insane. Let's think about this for a second. You play this card or Spellwild Oof on turn 2, right?
Mm-hmm.
On turn 3, you hit your 3rd land drop. So now what you want is a really good aura, the best possible aura that costs 5. That's what you want. So you can accelerate into your 5 mana aura onto your creature on turn 3 and swing. That's what I'm envisioning. Angelic Destiny definitely is probably better because then you could have 1 mana open for interaction to protect your creature if they're trying to kill it. Or even better, probably something that costs 3 that's a piece of interaction that actually is only going to cost 1 to interact with. That actually also sounds awesome. Actually, that sounds really fun. So Angelic Destiny, and is there I wonder if there's some piece of interaction that's target creature you control gains protection from, or gains hexproof, and then also has draw a card,
Sure.
It costs 3, it's an instant. Something that all the cards in your deck are going to be the creatures you're going to target are Killian and Spellwild Oof anyway. All right, this is a tangent that I've just gone down a rabbit hole on, but it still sounds really fun. Maybe I'll try to build this.
I'm looking up Ojutai's command because I want to remember what the 3rd ability is.
Gain 4, counter a creature, draw a card, or resurrect a creature for 2 or less from your graveyard of the battlefield.
Does not target a creature. I was hoping it did. So you could do snap cryptic commandy things, but I think a cool Mardu Feather Killian deck is just already getting really sweet, and these 3 cards together with the owl can do really cool things. I think, as you said, some of the more bulky enchantments that let you do really powerful things are cool. Just making things cost the command conversation, right? Using the black command, because the black command gives creatures fear, right? That's one of the options.
Profane command, yeah, up to X target creature you control gain fear until end of turn.
That's cool.
Oh yeah, and that accelerates your
profane command.
That accelerates your profane command. Yeah. So what that actually does, which is really sweet, is it means you could resurrect something on turn a 3-drop as part of the cost on turn 3 for just 3 mana.
Mm-hmm.
You could -3/-3, or you could
drain for 3.
Yeah, that's kind of good. It's still pretty sweet.
I mean, getting the reanimation side's pretty dope. But you can do it for 2, right? On turn 2, you can path their creature, and then for 2 mana get those effects. get one of those effects. So I think that's a conversation. That's cool. I'm trying to see if there's any other commands that are dope with it. All the other ones get so expensive, other than Cryptic and the black one.
Yeah, exactly. All the original ones. Yeah, and Cryptic also, you only get to reduce Cryptic by 1 because it's triple blue. So
well, but I'm imagining you're playing it with the like they're all together, right? And even like getting Cryptic Command to be 1 less is like a blowout. Sometimes people won't see it coming.
True.
If you turn 2 Killian and then turn 3 you just pass and swing for 2, gain 2 life with Menace, and now you have 3 mana Cryptic Command available to you if you need it.
With your black-white creature and your triple blue spell.
This is Modern. We can play whatever colors we want. That's not that hard. I've played more difficult things. You have Life King, the lifelink. You can get that mana. You can get that life back from those fetch lands.
This Killian Spellwild Oof deck. I'm all about it. I'm gonna build it.
It's also just like the right converted mana cost, right? 2 mana for a lifelink menace. That just 2 mana for a lifelink menace that gets like some marginal benefit is like a conversation to have. Adding to an ability that's actually something you want to do is cool. Callous Blood Mage, 2 black vampire warlock. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1. Create a pest. You draw a card and you lose 1 life, or exile target player's graveyard. That last ability to me is what makes this a real conversation. The first 2 are good, right? Like playing a 3 mana to get 3/2 in the power, and one of them you get the save. It's kind of a reverse version, a not as good version as Blade Splicer.
Wait, hang on. Before we move on for a second, can we just all talk about the fact that Colossification is a card that exists? This is green 5 enchantment aura. Enchanted creature gets +20/+20. That's what I want to do. All right, we can keep going.
Back to Callous Blood Mage. So like you can use the draw card, you can blink it to draw a card, you can blink it to get tokens. But the big one is like those 2 abilities that once in a while you just will beat Dredge. Here's my 3 mana spell that I can main deck, and now you're Dredge. Now you lose Dredge. Sorry. Here's my main deckable thing. Sorry, other graveyard decks, your graveyard's gone.
Yeah, I mean the fact that this is modal, it's a vampire. This card's sweet. This card's really cool. It does like a lot of really fun stuff.
All the choices.
It is a 3 mana 2/1. I wish it was a 2 mana 2/1.
Well, I think it was 2 mana 2/1, it'd be too good. I think it would be too good regardless of what you put, because I think we're talking about it being almost playable, and that's already a pretty like stably moment for other formats. But the fact that it could be like a 2/3 would be nice, or a 1/3. The cool thing though is that it's also a vampire. I think that's the one thing to not overlook is like if vampire tribal ever becomes a thing, this thing becomes a staple in that deck. Just out of the sideboard, it's a staple out of the deck. If there's anything that kind of triggers with it, I think it's really strong. If only it was 2 mana.
There's also, by the way, getting back to our last conversation, there is the miracle for green and 4 that is distribute 4 +1/+1 counters on any number of target creatures, which means that you could turn your little menace lifelinker into a 6/6 on turn 3.
I mean, that is true. Playing a deck that's just about pumping, and Feather and the Bird both kind of like that, right? Like in the Infect deck we mentioned, just not doing Infect, just making it about that, and like giving Killian plus any amount of plus counters or damage is huge life swings because of the lifelink. Like lifelink is really powerful with pump spells.
Yeah, I mean, he's just swinging with a 6/6 menace lifelink on turn 3 is quite good. And I mean, granted, like a removal spell's a removal spell. Like sure, blowout's a blowout, but it also means though that like because spells that target it cost less to cast, what it means is something like Apostle's Blessing. That is you can pay the white with Phyrexian mana. The colorless then gets reduced to nothing. Like Apostle's Blessing becomes a free protection spell.
That's
right?
true. That's cool. That's cool. I like that a lot, actually. That's a really good option here. Making it free to protect him is like very strong. Yeah, there's really cool stuff. Baleful Mastery, 3 black instant. You may pay 1 black instead of paying this mana spell cost. If you pay 1 black, an opponent draws a card. So you can cast this for 4 mana or 2 mana. Target opponent draws a card. Exile target creature or planeswalker. This card seems so strong to me. Like you don't have to let your opponent draw a card. Where does your opponent draws a card rank to you among put a land into play tapped under their control?
It's pretty similar. I never want to let my opponent draw. And I think when you're talking about a format like Modern, that can be the deciding factor in a game often. Just like the card advantage of a single card can swing the whole game. But I do think that this card having the optionality of if you're sitting there waiting to interact and you get later into the game and you just paying 4 just doesn't matter to you. But the fact that you have the option early if you like need to not lose, or you're just trying to clear the way, maybe to push through. This card's going to see a lot of play in a lot of decks. This card is very good. And the fact that this deals with a planeswalker at instant speed as well is so good. This card is so good too, because like, okay, so what about when your opponent like does the dumb thing where they're like, I play my planeswalker, no, I crack my fetch, and you're like, in response to you cracking the fetch, I exile your planeswalker before you exiled it in your second main phase, like you were planning on doing.
Yep.
Because you just gave up your priority.
It's an instant. Yeah.
You know?
Yep. I think the other thing that's cool about this card is it feels like Path, right? Except I think I think on turn 2, pathing your opponent's creature is worse for you than letting them draw a random card. I feel like
I mean, ramping them in the early game is like can be devastating.
And the late game,
you can just lose.
And when Path doesn't matter, like late game when you pass something, it doesn't matter because they already have land. This you just cast as a 4-drop at the end of their end step, right? So it's worse in that it costs 1 more mana than Path. But I think like I think if they printed 1 white instant exile target creature, they draw a card that sees more play than Path to Exile.
Debatable. It'd be a 50-50 split. It'd be a 50-50 split because the truth is there are some matchups where you just don't care at all about them searching for a land. Like whether it's early or it's late, you just don't care. And then there are some matchups where them having a land early, like there's nothing worse than your opponent playing like Bird of Paradise or like Hierarch and you being like, my spell to get rid of your early play is just replacing it. This is worthless.
Well, that's what Path does with birds, right? Like it's literally that. You play Birds of Paradise, I path it, you have a land now. That's the best case, right? That's what you like using Path on a bird's early game because you don't like it just doesn't do anything. You just won't do that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you don't ever that's not what you want. You want push or you want bolt when that happens. You don't want to have Path to Exile in that situation.
But drawing the I would love to have a card that let me kill Birds of Paradise and my opponent draws a card for 1 white.
No, yeah, we're on the same page. We're saying the same thing. Yeah.
So I think this card's nuts. And sorry, I got what you were saying backwards. Yes. Well, we are on the same page.
I like Baleful Mastery a lot. I really think this card's quite good.
Yeah. And I believe this is the last not lesson card. Ecological Appreciation. X2 green, sorcery, search your library and graveyard for up to 4 creature cards with different names that each have mana value X or less, and reveal them. An opponent chooses 2 of those cards, shuffle the chosen cards into your library, and put the rest on the battlefield. Exile Ecological Appreciation. So this is a Gifts Ungiven in green in a weird way. I think this is worse than Gifts Ungiven, but because Gifts Ungiven has the ability to let you you can fail to find, and so it there's a more breakable way. But there's a lot of cards that you can get that you just win, right? Like you can get the fact that it doesn't go to your graveyard sucks.
Yeah, and also the fact that it doesn't put them in your graveyard. Saying the fact that it puts shuffles in the back of the deck. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things about this that come to mind. So the first one is if there was a deck where like having 3 1-drops in Modern consistently won you the game, or having 2 1-drops won you the game, we would know about it. Like that would be a really good deck because it would be cheap and everything would be like the cheapest thing possible. That's what you want this to be, but it isn't, because obviously, if you're going to try to get combo pieces, at least one of them is going to cost more than 1, which means that this is probably, if you're just outright searching for a combo, going to cost a minimum of 5 minimum. So if you're just going for value, this is 4 mana to get a bunch of 1-drop creatures that are good and have value. And that's, to me, the place where this is going to be the most valuable. Because if you're starting to spend 5 mana or 6 mana or 7 mana to tutor through your deck for things, there's just so many efficient tutors now that have come along that put the card into your hand or into play that don't cost very much, that are like what you need to win the game. So this, to me, is just a pure value card. Somebody will find a way probably to break this in a way that I don't see right now. But the fact that X is there, that's the thing. I wish this had just been sorcery speed Gifts Ungiven. Like if this thing had just been like green 3 sorcery and it had said like search for 4 creature cards with like CMC 3 or less, maybe, to like limit how big you could get or something, or 2 or less, maybe. That would have made more sense.
All right. So that is the part 3 of our set review. Thank you so much, all of our patrons. Listeners, please comment below what we're doing. We are doing lessons and classes, I promise. Next week, we're going to have a whole conversation about them. I think there's a really cool design space. I also want to talk about wishes next week. So it's going to be a whole deep dive into how they play. Also talking about other formats, because we do want to talk about lessons in historic and standard, etc. So that's going to be a really fun conversation. Thank you so much to our patrons for doing it. Once again, please hit that like button. Honestly, when I say this, it does really help. And if you just post this video on a different social media to share it, that'd be great as well. And if you're listening to this audio only, we do content on YouTube as well. There's all the pictures when we talk about them. You get all this cool infographics and information. We put a lot of work into it. Plus, we do other content on YouTube. So please check that out. Like and subscribe there as well. Lastly, I personally have been releasing a lot of TikTok content recently. So if you can follow me at Kess Wiley on TikTok, and I'm having fun there. It's a blast. I'm at Kess Wiley everywhere else as well, but TikTok is where I've been putting a little bit more effort into, especially last week.
Cool. Yeah, you guys can find me at Ben Bateman Media, Twitter, Instagram. I'm posting recently a lot of music content. I am getting ready to release an album in July. Put up my first song this last week, 2 weeks ago now, and that's very well received, which is really nice of you guys. And I'll be touring in August. I'll hopefully come to a city near you, which would be a lot of fun. So check that out on my social. You'll find all the things.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, guys.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.